January 10th, 2026 marks year 4 and day 321 since the full-scale invasion began. Welcome for the Daily Situation Report. In today's report, we see drone tactics. We see a lot about drones. We see territorial gains on the Russian side, and we also see how one of the minor rulers within the Russian regime is doing, and of course, much more. But first, let's talk about the drone strikes. The Ukrainian General Staff reports the nightly drone attacks on several targets in Russia, including one in Volgograd. The Chutovskaya oil depot was hit there, while in the occupied territories of Ukraine, a drone depot in Zaporizhzhia Oblast and several command posts in Donetsk Oblast were attacked. Operationally, this combination is significant because it addresses two levels. First, the fuel and logistics pressure in the Russian rear areas. Because an oil depot is not a prestige target, but rather a supply target, every successful hit forces Russia to reroute, provide additional security, carry out repairs, and divert resources away from the front. Secondly, the destruction of command and drone structures directly in the occupied area, just like with the drone depot I just mentioned. A hit on such a drone depot potentially means less reconnaissance and kamikaze drone pressure in a specific sector. Hits on command posts strike the enemy where coordination, artillery control, and drone operations come together. That means they're trying once again to focus heavily on Russia's operational capabilities here. Several indications point to a significant deterioration in the health of Chechnya's ruler, Kadyrov. According to reports from Kremlin circles, Kadyrov had to receive medical treatment in Moscow at the end of December after a medical emergency. And according to these reports, he could only be stabilized again with great difficulty. That means he almost died. Against this background, the appointment of his 20-year-old son as acting deputy prime minister is highly politically significant. It marks less of an ordinary personnel decision and more of another step toward dynastic consolidation of power within the Kadyrov clan. Thus, once again, key government functions, as well as sports policy and control over symbolically important institutions, are being handed over to someone despite a lack of real administrative experience, who is certainly not more competent than others, but still comes from the family circle. In addition, Kadyrov has repeatedly asked Putin in recent weeks to be relieved of his duties and to step down from his position. The question of Kadyrov's succession is strategically relevant, since his power is based less on his abilities and more on personal loyalty to Putin, massive repression, and a close-knit family network. A sudden absence or death would create a power vacuum that Moscow would struggle to control in the short term. And at the same time, keep in mind that he has obtained a lot of things from Moscow, especially with his Chechen army, vehicles, weapons, ammunition, and even tanks. But these have hardly been used in this war and are still in Chechnya. That means he owns, or would essentially pass on, a large arsenal of weapons to someone whose loyalty to Putin remains unknown. The early positioning of his sons, some of whom are still minors, suggests nervousness within the inner circle of power, and that's all we know. In the north of Pokrovsk, more precisely at the Blue Pin, Ukrainian and Russian infantry engaged in a battle. This is a rare recording from the city showing soldiers fighting each other at close range. Since we've mostly seen drone strikes in recent weeks and few from riflemen, this is actually something new. This means the last Ukrainian resistance in the northern part of the city still remains, but these are mainly isolated soldiers who are not intended or suitable for a counterattack or recapture. It can also be seen that the Ukrainians will not recapture the city, but only want to slow down the Russian advance. The Russians have secured the northern part of Yuliapole. Shown here is a video clip of the Ukrainian 108th Territorial Defense Brigade as they attack Russian soldiers at the Blue Pin with drones. They look very calm while doing this and are more or less just walking around, which of course suggests that they thought it would be relatively safe here. This definitely shows us that the Russians control the area, otherwise they wouldn't be strolling around there. However, they do not control the low airspace, otherwise they would not have been attacked by a drone. But even the area further back is now under Russian control. At the Green Pin in Saline, Russians have raised several flags, so the area is considered under their control. This change started yesterday, but the rest of the area only today. The 394th Motorized Rifle Regiment, along with the 57th, placed the flags. Brigade was recently moved here. Do you remember the 57th? Brigade? They were stationed at the Battle of Bakhmut for nearly a year, and I covered them often in my analyses then. I don't think there are any left who also fought in the Battle of Bakhmut, which was 3 years ago now. Take a look at this drone tactic. A drone is lying in wait in the forest in front of a Russian vehicle until their soldiers come out. Eventually, they come out, and the drone only needs to rise a few meters into the air and can immediately carry out a top attack strike. In the past, especially at the beginning of the invasion, people would lie down on the ground, maybe hide under some vegetation, hoping it was just a reconnaissance drone. In most cases, they were just reconnaissance drones, and of course you also hope that it wouldn't spot you personally. Nowadays, the drone lurks in poorly visible hiding spots near positions along the roads. Since the battery lasts longer, the connection is more stable, and the pilots have more options than before. And then something like this happens. You end up going to the drone yourself instead of it coming to you. But let's stay with drone warfare and its development. We've really seen and discussed many times that you shouldn't drive around with a speedboat near drones anymore. Where do you even want to escape to? You're forced to stay on the water. And honestly, no matter how fast the speedboat is, the drone will always be faster. You can hardly dodge, and if you fall off the board, you risk drowning because of the heavy equipment. Otherwise, you can only go ashore. That's what they tried here too, because they tried to hide in the reeds and were then gradually attacked by the drone. How is it possible that they couldn't hide? Now let's take a look inside the drone operations center. Here you can see one of the survivors hiding. He can see the drone just as well as the drone can see him, but he won't be sure whether the drone is watching him specifically or if the camera is aimed at another target. In the same area of operation, there is also a drone with thermal vision. It scouts the area and then directs the others where to fly in order to engage the targets. And something like this wasn't possible a few years ago, so we're seeing the beginning of well-coordinated drone warfare, which will probably be with us for several more years. Most likely, artificial intelligence will soon operate in swarms and replace many drone pilots. Just imagine, you only need one soldier who does reconnaissance or simply authorizes found targets for an attack. Sounds like a lot of future, but it's actually already being tested in Ukraine, even by some German manufacturers. Let's stick with drones and thermal cameras for a moment. Here, we can clearly see that winter snow footprints reveal soldiers' movements, even from this view. So you can be very well hidden, but that doesn't help anyone if your own footprints can be tracked. And with that, I want to thank all subscribers, channel members, and the Algae crew. Special thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Rennecke, Robert Siller, Dietrich Freddy, and Meyerhofer. Please subscribe, like, comment, and see you in the next report.